Welcome to Whistleblowers in partnership with Wix Trade Pro. Coming up.
So physically, when you look at Mo Salah, he's not dropped off physically.
Yeah, no, Joel,
he
has.
I swear too much on the football pitch.
Why does that not surprise me?
You know what? If I get a chance, I'm going to screw you over. I thought, when I get my chance, I'm going to have the game of my life, and that's what I hope to do, and that's what I tried to do.
Welcome to Whistleblowers, the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us once again. As tradition dictates, we have the man in the middle, the referee, the one and only Mark Clattenburg. Good morning, Mark Clattenburg.
Good morning, and nice to be remotely at last. So nice to see you all, and I hope you're well, and lovely to see Joel right next to you.
Yeah, well, you've done the job for me. You've introduced our next guest. He's returned. The last time he came in, he was just about to get married. The good news for everybody listening, he is still married.
Still married, guys. Still going on strong. 3 months in.
Joel Beya, welcome back.
Thank you very much. How you doing, Gordon?
Have you had second thoughts yet?
Nah, never. She's great, and I know she's going to be watching this show. So I love you, babe.
Great, that's taken our audience to 47 on the Whistleblowers podcast. And a man who's happily married, so happily married that he's in Madrid right now, spends about 6 nights of the week away from home. Wow. And that's the secret, isn't it, Ian Ladyman, to a happy marriage?
I'm not married. You should know this. I'm not married. We are not, Vicky and I are not married. We are not married.
Well, don't tell Mark Clattenburg that. I mean, I'm knocking on your door.
You should know this. But yeah, we are. I'm good. I'm in Madrid. Hello, everybody. All looking well. Joel, good to see you back again, mate.
How's Vicky doing? She all right?
She's absolutely spot on, mate. Thank you very much. She's spot on. She just sent me a photograph last night when I landed in Madrid to show me that she just put up our third Christmas tree. We've gone from a two Christmas tree household to a 3 Christmas tree household. Wow. I've only been out the house 3 minutes, and that's what happens.
Nothing says Daily Mail journalist to me than 3 Christmas
trees. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Christmas is Christmas. You've got to embrace it.
Unbelievable. Would you like to share with listeners why you're not married? Or is it just because why we're all thinking it's because you're tight?
It's just look, Gordon, nobody answers your own questions better than you do. You've just answered your own question.
Yeah, I want to come to your wedding to eat bacon rolls at 1 o'clock in the morning. I want a full 3-course meal. I'd like to be put up in a nice hotel, and I'd like to be the token Scottish guy on the dance floor, annoying everybody sweating.
I was liking the sound of the bacon rolls at 1 a.m. You had me at bacon rolls. I wasn't sure about the 3-course meal bit, but we've been engaged for 6 years, and we haven't got our little girl's almost 7, and even she's stopped asking us when we're going to get married. But look, mark my words, it will happen.
It will happen. Well, there's your Christmas, Mrs. Ladyman, if you're listening right now. Mrs. Ladyman to be. If we were doing punditry on Ian Ladyman's wedding, Mark Clattenburg, what kind of position would you take if you considered yourself like a Roy Keane in the punditry world? And Ladyman's there, Andy Dillon's there. He's given a really bad taste best man speech, insulted the family. What would you think you'd be saying about the wedding?
What could I say?
Would you bring your whistle?
Yeah, 100%. 3, 2, 1. But no, 6 years and you've been engaged and you're still not married. There's something fundamentally wrong here. Yeah. You know what I mean? I would have took her off. Get married, sort her out, have a wonderful life together.
Steady on.
Job done. Like Joel, look at Joel. Joel did it properly. Joel, you went to Greece, yeah? You did it properly, romantically, done it properly, ding dong. Solved.
I'm not sure what properly means, Mark. What do you mean properly? Did it properly? What's that mean?
Just get married, man, for crying out loud.
What does that mean? What does that mean? I think you had it when you said there's something fundamentally wrong. I think you should have stopped right there. There were more things there were more things fundamentally wrong with me than you'll ever have time to guess. That is all I can tell you, and you don't know half of them.
Especially riding through Moscow on a horseback.
We need to tell Joel about that.
There was nothing fundamentally wrong with that.
Class. Great technique. What I did think there was you could speak to Mark and get a little connection to Mr. Marinakis for some kind of Greek villa. We mentioned loosely there a little bit of punditry on Ian's wedding, but there's a reason for that, because this week, I think it's the first time it's really properly kicked off between the ex-players, current players. It really has become a war of words. Now, before we get into the Mo Salah stuff, Ian, I think it'd be really valuable for people to understand how this all developed behind the scenes, because you had a proper front row seat for this, didn't you, when it all kicked off after the game the other day?
Pretty much. So I was at Ellen Road for the Liverpool game, and myself and our Merseyside reporter Lewis Steele, who obviously has been on the podcast a good number of times. And the way it tends to happen at those games is that one of you looks after the match report or the match analysis for the website and for the next day's newspaper, and the other guy kind of scurries around doing the quotes, trying to speak to players, speaking to the managers. So I was doing the match report stuff, and obviously it'd been dramatic enough as it was. Watching Liverpool coasting it 2-0 and then just fall apart on the back of a lead, in the face of a Leeds comeback. Leeds score late in the game, and Arne Slot is just, it's like a dead man walking at that point. You watch him leave the field and you just think, this guy is just, nothing is going right for this guy. And even when you've been doing the job as long as I have, you feel those moments deeply, and you feel the drama, and you feel the tension, and you do feel for the people involved, especially when it's a decent guy like Arne Slot. So I'm sitting there in the press room writing my match report, and aware that out the corner of my eye, Arne Slot will come into the room any minute and do his press conference. And I think it was just after Slot had been in, Lewis just appeared in my eye line and came scurrying over and leant over and said to me, he said, "You will not believe what Mo Salah's just said outside by the bus." And he tells me what he said. And it is almost like you can just feel the air being sucked out of the room. Because, when you've been doing this job a long time, you've seen everything, okay? Yeah. Every story that's ever been done, you have seen. It's just with different names, different people involved, okay? You've done it all. But when something like that happens, you are still, you almost sound, you actually transported back into just being a football punter. And you just think, oh my God, has he actually just said that? Yeah. Has he actually just said that? Today, in this moment, of all moments, has he actually just walked out, a guy who never speaks to the media? Certainly, apart from the stuff that he's got to do, the paid stuff that he has to do for the club. He never speaks to the media. And he's come out and he's chosen that moment when his manager is on the floor, beaten up as it is. He's really chosen that moment to come and stand on his throat. And it was a real wow moment.
Yeah.
Can I ask, which outlet did he speak to?
It was Norwegian.
It was a Norwegian.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And look, let's not get into the kind of minutiae and the bitterness of arguments between different outlets. What happened was essentially at Leeds, I think the interview area is somewhere between the back door of the stadium and the bus, and the journalists stand behind a barrier, and the players walk past. And what happened was, I'm told that Mo Salah came over to speak to a guy that he knows from one of the local Liverpool outlets. Okay, but so he comes over to speak to that guy, but then obviously everybody just piles in. It's a free for all. They call it a mix zone for a reason. Anybody with an accreditation can be there. Leader. So they're all in, and so from what I'm led to believe, it was what I would describe as the Merseyside football writers who were doing the conversation, asking the questions. But you never know who's standing behind you. You never know who's standing behind you. Yeah. And there was an agreement. So there was agreement that he said what he said. It's about 8:30 in the evening, I think it was at that time. And there was an understanding, we can't just throw this out there straight away. Let's get our ducks in a row and let's put it out together at 9:30. So it was agreed that it would go out at 9:30. And then the guy standing at the back from the Norwegian outlet either didn't understand, didn't hear, or didn't care. So it ends up going out a little bit sooner. So that's how it happened. That's how it happened. Those situations are a joint effort, because if you've seen the footage, you'll see about 7, 8, 9, 10 people crowded around with microphones and tape recorders. It's just the way it goes. It's a free for all.
That's interesting. The reason why I ask is because sometimes you wonder as well, what kind of mood and what setting was it? Did he just come out and say, I'm just talking to any random person, or So I think, to me, last year when he was talking about the contracts, again, it felt very random, if that makes sense. So it was a very similar situation. That was at Southampton, after a game at Southampton, almost exactly a year ago, actually, when he came out and again sought out the faces that he recognised from the Liverpool press pack. That was when he when he said, "I'm more out than in" about signing the new contract, and that was exactly the same. He saw faces that he recognised, and he decides, this is my moment. And if you watch the footage again from Saturday, you can see a guy in the background with a yellow lanyard. That's one of the Liverpool press officers. And you can see his reaction when Salah
mentions the word under the bus, you can see the guy almost kind of self-combust with anxiety when he realises what one of their players has said. Extraordinary moments, those.
Just for the avoidance of doubt, this is what he said. It's not acceptable to me, to be fair. I don't get it. It's like I'm being thrown under the bus. I don't think I'm the problem. I've done so much for this club. I don't have to go every day fighting from a position. I earned it. I'm not bigger than anyone, but I earned my position. It's football. It's what it is. It seems like someone does not want me in the club. The other part of the story was he said, I called my mum and dad, told them to come to the Brighton game. Doesn't matter if I play or not. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm just going to be at Anfield and say goodbye to the fans before that African Cup of Nations because I don't know what is going to happen when I'm there. And I will come back, Ian, in just a second. Mark, you spend a lot of time in the studio with ex-pros. How much of it do you think it's about pundits trying to make the agenda, set the agenda with their own name in the headlines? And how much of it is fair criticism, do you think? What's the balance there?
I think there's a balance between both, maybe 50-50. You could argue that some pundits have got agendas, 100%. And it's really difficult when, and I've had it myself when I go against referees. For example, when I speak about referees get really worried about what you've got to say instead of thinking about criticism can be a positive. I think if you get a little bit of criticism, I think you should take that on the shoulders and work harder. But some people react in a way that think that everything's against them. Yeah. I just think pundits have got to have a fine balance between criticism and certainly what they're paid to do, which is analyze football from a tactical point of view, because we as fans want to hear the tactical side instead of like calling out an individual. I just think sometimes pundits call out individuals wrongly for clickbait as we talk about, but really fans want to hear what they really want to hear is the tactical side of the game, which fans don't understand, and there's that fine balance.
Joel, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because traditionally Ian and I back in the days where print dominated, we'd be the ones that have these battles with the players and the managers, but you guys have really grabbed that, haven't you? And Arsenal TV in particular was a place where that sort of punditry has become powerful. You're right at the front of this. Where do you sit?
Well, again, look, I've got my show with Rio that we do, and yesterday we did a podcast on it, and it was really interesting hearing Rio's point of view because he's an ex-pro. So you look and you go, he believes that you've got the likes of Mo Salah, and he sympathises a little bit with the players. You can tell a lot of the players do. I heard Andy Cole say that he needs a little bit of grace, etc. I actually thought that, I'll just put it out there, these are my views. I thought Jamie Carragher was right for the first 1 or 2 minutes. I thought when he came out and he said, look, he's only spoken in the mixed zone 4 times. It's when he wants something. I thought, agreed. That's not right. That's not the way it should be. However, I just felt it went a bit personal when he started talking about he's known as a failed Chelsea player, and you haven't won an AFCON for Egypt. And I know he's trying to say that Liverpool had given him the platform, but it's like we don't really need to speak about that at the moment. Do you see what I mean? Like if we're talking about Liverpool, let's keep it about Liverpool. Let's keep it about the comments that you said. Let's keep it about the performance. On the same side, I believe that Mo Salah, he didn't articulate himself properly, or his headspace isn't in the right place either, and he's wrong because you shouldn't come out and make it all about yourself. You shouldn't do that, if I'm honest with you. If you feel like you've been thrown under the bus, look, maybe he has, for all we know. We're not privy to what's going on over there. But again, I do feel like communication, the way you communicate things, and your teammates, you've got to consider.
The candor and language is important, isn't it? Because El Mohammadi's, I don't know if you've seen this, right, but he said, Jamie, you're a disgrace. Salah completely rewrote his story through hard work, humility, world-class performances. He didn't fail at Chelsea. He was never given the chance. He went to Italy, rebuilt himself, came to Liverpool and became a Premier League legend, Egypt's greatest player, one of the most consistent forwards of his generation. Salah has carried Egypt for years, getting Egypt qualified for World Cup twice. He's earned everything. No wonder you got blanked by Ronaldo. No wonder Messi called you out. No wonder Mourinho said you were below average and not even the top of the
as well. He's gone personal as well. But this is what I mean. Let's keep it about the facts and what's going on. Like, I don't care if he got blanked by Ronaldo. The way I look at it is I go, look, I think he went too deep. I think he should have kept it about what it was. I think the thing with Jamie is he's going to position himself to make sure that he is Mr. Liverpool, so there is a bit of an agenda there. At the same time, I don't think Mo should be talking about, I don't care if I play against Brighton or not. Look, two things can be right. You know, like I do think sometimes it's not as easy as I agree with this person 100% or I agree with Mo 100%. I think there's elements where Mo was wrong. I think there's elements where Jamie were wrong, and it's not me being on the fence. I think it's just a mature way to look at things, really.
Right, Ian Ladyman, the next step of this conversation, right? And there's two parts to this. Andy Robertson gave an interesting interview last night as we record this. What was it he said that impressed you? Because he has, if you make a comparison here, right, before we get this answer, Andy Robertson's been at the club just as long as Salah. He's won all the same trophies. He's been benched probably more often. And you could argue he's just as important to the team in a different way, yet he has never once...
He's not as important, let's be honest. You know, he's not as important. He's not as important as Mo Salah. Like, I think he's very important, don't get me wrong. If you go back 3-4 years ago, then maybe yes, but he's not as important. So
you take him out of the team, look what happens. Ian, what did he say last night that impressed you?
I just saw a clip actually from post-match. He was actually still on the field. It was one of those kind of flash interviews that they do on the field after the game, and he was clearly very emotional. And what impressed me about him was that he does the interview. He knows how it works. He knows the first two questions are going to be about what the game was like against Inter, but then he also knows that what they've really got in there for us to talk about Mo Salah. So when the Mo Salah question comes, he doesn't kind of harumph about it as he may have done. And he doesn't kind of look a bit kind of how dare you ask me, or he doesn't give a like, oh, I'm only here to talk about the football. He just talks about it and says, he's my mate, he's my teammate. I've loved playing with him. I hope I can play with him again. But at the moment, we've kind of all got to stick together. Now that it might not sound very much when I praise it, but it was just the way he did it, and it just makes you realise that football is about people like Andy Robertson who will absolutely do all those things that you've just said, Gordon. Be humble, accept that he's getting slightly old and won't play all the time, doesn't necessarily ask to leave, good teammate, good person, and still a bloody good footballer. And it was just listening to him speak when you've got arguably the most talented player in the squad back home, posting photographs of himself on his own in the gym on social media. That's just a contrast. You could argue that you need both of those types in your dressing room. You need there's the reliable 8 out of 10 guys, and you also need the genius. You also need the genius as well if you're going to win a league. And at the moment, sadly, the genius is the one sitting at home on his own in the gym.
Gordon, so I just want to ask you, what's your thoughts on that when you saw the Mo Salah social media post in the gym?
It's a classic social media thirst trap, isn't it? He is calling for affirmation, isn't he?
PR 101.
Yeah, it's a classic move, isn't it? But again, if I was managing him, I think I'd be sitting him down saying, of all the seasons to make it about you, I would really struggle with that if he was my teammate. I know he's a talented boy and all the rest of it, but they should be galvanised by the Jota stuff, and that should be the only message. That every conversation, boys, is about doing the honourable thing for a player that we lost this season. Let's not make it about ego. Let's not make it about narcissism. Let's have these conversations indoor and stick to that.
What if?
What's it? Go on, Joe.
I was going to say, Mark. What if it is about? What if he is being thrown under the bus? Is he right?
Wow.
What if? Because we don't know. It's like I look at football clubs and it's like any other workplace, right?
Yeah.
Let's be honest, right? What if he is being thrown under the bus? Has he been right for what he's done?
Yeah, listen, I think Mo Salah, if Mo Salah has a problem, I think Mo Salah can try and do it when he gets his chance on the football field. I just think now Mo Salah's got this frustration as well, individually, that he's not performing to the same levels that he used to. That's just age, isn't it? That's just a natural thing. When you get older, you get a bit more frustrated. It's interesting what I see from Liverpool. Liverpool were a settled club under Klopp. Nobody came out. Nobody really criticised anything. And now under Slot, there just seems to be a lot of cracks happening around the club. Maybe, everybody said to me, when they signed Isak, Liverpool are a top club, one of the biggest clubs in the world. But they've now got players speaking like this, which creates problems in the dressing room. I just think now...
they've got one player, Mark.
But this one player...
Hold up, let's get Joel back.
It's the biggest player. I have to stop you on 2 points there, Mark, because first of all, you said that he is getting older. Mate, he was doing the business for them 6 months ago. right? So physically, when you look at Mo Salah, he's not dropped off physically. He's not lost his pace.
Joel,
he hasn't,
Joel,
you know,
Joel, he has.
He's just
I watched this a year ago. I watched this about six, and I said this on the podcast early part. I loved watching Mo Salah. I've refereed Mo Salah. Mo Salah used to go past fullbacks for fun. He would turn them inside out. He would put fullbacks on their backside. Now, fullbacks are easily getting back to him. That happened over a period of time. I'm not saying he's lost his legs like Jamie Carragher referred to. That's disrespectful. But he's not going past players like he used to. He turns back inside. Fullbacks know that, so they defend in a certain way. And he's not as effective as he used to be.
He's either lost his legs or he's lost his confidence. I mean, it is very, very true that he's been poor since February. That is true. He's been poor since February. He was awful in the Carabao Cup final against Newcastle. He was awful in the 2 legs against PSG when Liverpool went out the Champions League and didn't massively pick up again. If you look at his stats, Joel, his stats go tail off massively at the back end of last season, and that's continued into this. Now, that might not be a physical thing. It could be a confidence thing. Even good pundits, even good players suffer with confidence. But just I want to say one thing, because I know that you probably move out of the subject soon, Gordon, about back to the pundits and about Carragher. Yeah. I spoke to Carragher on Tuesday. It's Wednesday morning as we sit here. I spoke to Jamie yesterday, Wednesday, because I'm going to write something about his relationship with Liverpool. And he was very, very candid with me and essentially said to me that, to paraphrase it, he doesn't lose a wink of sleep over the things that he says about Liverpool. He says it as he feels it. He said he's not played for the club for 15 years. He doesn't have relationships inside the dressing room anymore. He doesn't have relations at the club, and he feels free and he feels obliged as a pundit to say it as he sees it. I'm with you, Joel, on the thing he said on Monday Night Football about Salah. I think you've nailed it there. The first bit of it was absolutely spot on. Not sure where the Chelsea AFCON business was coming from, really. Not sure about that. But he did. But I do know one thing, is that there was a meeting between Jamie Carragher and Liverpool earlier this season about to discuss Jamie's style of punditry, and I think the feeling is that there had been a couple of complaints coming from within the Liverpool dressing room about some of the things that Jamie has said, and I'm pretty sure that the 2 individuals who most regularly get upset with Jamie are Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk.
No surprise.
No, and I think it's interesting. I do wonder if dressing rooms are more sensitive now than they used to be. Yeah. Whether social media has ramped that up.
I think I think they're exactly the same as they've always been in.
I was talking to somebody at Manchester United last week about a similar issue, and they said to me, the problem is that the players in the United dressing room, for example, they don't watch the Monday Night Football. They don't watch, or blah, 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 but they see all the clips. It gets clipped up and they see all of it. And it was put to me that these players live in this world of social media rotation where everything just goes round and round on a loop. And if it's negative, then it really affects them. Now, we can argue whether they need to be stronger, but I think it's the fact that this stuff really, really gets to some of them.
Ian, I just want to point out what you said earlier on. So your point was that, look, Jamie doesn't have ties to the club as per se. I think because we live in the digital era, it's not necessarily his relationship with the club that he probably looks at. Working with a lot of ex-players and ex-pros, you have to understand that they are also personalities and big personalities on TV and on digital. So I think what he looks at more than anything is how he's perceived by the Liverpool fan base. I think for him, that's more important than even the club, So my belief is that he will stand with whatever it is that the Liverpool fans stand with, and the Liverpool fans may not like it.
And let's be honest, Joe, it's not just him at the moment, is it? Like Martin Keown's getting it, isn't he, for being supposedly being biased towards Arsenal, and it is happening across the board at the moment in punditry. There's an issue here for me, right? And Andy Cole really challenges me as a pundit. I find it really hard to listen to him because I get quite cross about it. But he said an interesting thing. He said, "Why is nobody criticising or looking at Van Dijk and Konate in the same way as Mo Salah, because they haven't been performing, so why haven't they been dropped?" And it was interesting to hear a forward's point of view, and I wrestled with it for a while, but it makes an interesting point, doesn't it?
Do you think he's the strikers' union, though, at the same
Possibly,
time?
yeah, possibly.
Because he's had issues where he's not been happy with, certain managers and stuff like that, and maybe he felt like he wasn't heard. So I feel like different people come at it from different angles, right? I don't see Andy Cole as, trying to be a media personality sensation. He's Mr. Andy Cole. He's probably going to look at it the way he looks at it and strikers look at it. Yeah. I can guarantee you that,
There's a reason why Canati's not been dropped.
They ain't got anyone else.
They haven't
got no centre half.
I know,
I was saying to Mark before we came on air, Canati and Van Dijk ideally look like they need 2 weeks lying down in a dark room.
They do,
because they just keep playing every week. There's no one else.
Yeah.
Those two are Those two desperately need taken out of that team, and Slot can't do it.
Yeah, and that bringing it back to the punditry, I think your old colleague Chris Sutton said, we're seeing Mo Salah for what he really is. It's all about him. It's him being selfish. And the Sutton's very good, isn't he, Ian, at grabbing the headlines for his punditry. But I've got a bit of an issue here at the moment with not just the overlap, but all of these things where ex-players now have to articulate themselves over the period of an hour, right? So they talk themselves into corners. They're professional athletes, and sometimes I think the language leaves them behind a little bit and they miss the point. Like, as you say, the Jamie Carragher legs have gone is one example of it. And the second part of it,
David Jones about that
he'll only ever be remembered as a Chelsea failure. He's like, no, you won't. You've talked yourself into a cul-de-sac there because you've got a minute and a half to talk. And actually, I think he should have been produced in that point. It's like, right, stop there.
He was reading from his notes, so we can't say he didn't have the time. Look, he was going to go emotional whether he had prepared it or whether he didn't. Okay.
That was brilliant by Dave Jones, by the way. You mentioned it there, Joel. That was a brilliant piece of journalism, and that's why it pays to have a professional, trained journalist in that spot to spot it and pick him up on it immediately.
I don't think he'll mind me saying this because it wasn't too deep, but I messaged him saying that was hilarious. And he said, you know what, Joel, as a fellow presenter, he said, I'd rather not be on the side of the headlines. That was his professional response, if I'm honest with you.
Used to play football with Dave Jones. I think I told you before. He said that I swear too much on the football pitch.
You know what? He's really
Why does that
good
not
like
surprise me?
On the punditry side of it, though, Ian, kept bringing it back to that. It does feel now, right, because there is a competition that exists, and I would say it's a healthy competition. But at the same time, I now feel that there's an environment where there is a little bit of I need to outdo the other lot. Do you get a sense of that? Because it's interesting because you've got the traditional newspaper press, and now you've got this headline machine of the punditry and all these big podcasts.
Well, interesting. So Oliver Holt, Mail Sports chief sports writer, used a brilliant phrase last year when we were talking about this. He described it as a clickbait arms race, and I thought it was a brilliant way to describe it. I would attempt, in answering your question, to put pundits into two categories. I think you have pundits of real standing and stature, who don't need to do that. Okay, I would actually, and I would put, I've had clashes in the past with Gary, but I would put Gary Neville, for example, in that category. And I would put someone like Alan Shearer in that category. People who have earned their stripes over the years as pundits and have built reputations to be as people who you want to listen to. I'm not a Manchester United fan, as anyone who knows me will know. But I can sit and listen to Gary Neville talk about football all day long. I wouldn't agree with all of it, but I can listen to it. And then there's another section. Okay, I think I've said before, I think Joe Hart has elevated himself very, very quickly into that level as well. Very, very quickly into that level. I would put Martin Keown in that level as well. And then you've got another side, and I'm not going to name names, it's not right, but there's the other side where people are clearly doing it for clicks. Clearly doing it to try and get themselves out there. And it's understandable because it's a highly competitive industry, football punditry. Everybody wants to get into it. There's only so many spaces. And as we know, a lot of the good guys work for all of them. A lot of the guys who are talented work for all the bloody broadcasters, don't they? It's not just one, because they're all freelance. So I hope that answers your question.
It does.
Some of them are doing it. Some of them are doing it well. Some of them are doing it for the clicks.
What's your thoughts on this? You work with Rio. You've interviewed Salah as well, right? So I'd be quite keen to get your thoughts on him as a bloke.
I spoke with Salah a few months ago, if I'm honest with you, and I had the chance to be around him for a decent period of time during the course of 2 days. And I actually said this a couple times last week before it blew up. I was just talking to some young kids that I was mentoring. They asked me, you know, who's one of the most interesting players you've interviewed, and I actually said Mo Salah. I said reason being is because we all see Mo Salah as being a nice guy, which he is. You know, like he's a really family man orientated. But I remember the number one thing that stood out to me is that he is very self-driven about numbers. I actually went on record saying he is the closest player that I believe that is out there like Cristiano Ronaldo. Mm-hmm. You won't imagine it because obviously he smiles a lot and, you know, he's happy, etc. The majority of the time you see him, and he was really happy when I was with him, but he's happy about the numbers, what he can do, what he has to do, his improvement. And one of the questions that struck me, I asked him, I said, I asked him about Onslaught, why is the relationship so positive with him? He goes, look, as soon as Onslaught came through the door, he said he put his hand on my shoulder and he made me feel very special. You know, he made me feel very special. And I thought that was interesting because obviously it's a good thing that your manager's making you feel special. But I thought, oh, you're really into yourself, in that kind of way, you know. And he was really positive. But then it made me think, so what did you think about Jurgen Klopp then? Yeah. Do you see what I mean? Like if he's making you feel so special, are you saying that Jurgen wasn't? And then it made me think of that time when Jurgen substituted him a couple seasons ago, and it was a bit hostile.
We kind of have a short memory in football.
Remember?
Yeah.
So again, I do think there's times where he can be a little bit prickly, but people don't really see it, and he does. Maybe that's why he doesn't do too much media. Who knows?
Paul Scholes said a brilliant thing about this. He said, if your manager doesn't play, you hate him as a player.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that, right? Yeah. He's just not been playing.
Yeah, I mean, Scholes had an issue like that once when he was on the bench. A lot of these guys do. When you hear a lot of the pundits go, oh, you got to react right. I look and I go, he's had an issue. I remember his issue. Yeah. I remember, Thierry Henry was one of my favorite players, and he has said maybe it's maturity as well. You go, no, that you shouldn't respond like that. But the reality is, at that age, I remember when he was dropped by Arsene Wenger, and then Adebayor scores a goal, and Thierry Henry is on the touchline as if he's the manager in his own clothes, going, "Yeah!"
I bet those two. I bet Clattenburg's had the hump because he didn't get a game he wanted, and I bet Ladyman's had the hump because he didn't get to do the World Cup final.
Of course.
Yeah,
Of course, it's natural. It's natural. I remember, for example, when I wasn't getting games just before in 2016 when I was going for the Euros. And I was hoping to be appointed for the Euro finals, and I wasn't getting games in the Premier League. And I was in training on a Monday. The appointments, we would be on the training ground when the appointments came out by email. The guys would have their mobile phones in the pocket, and they would all be laughing. And I'm like, why are you laughing? I didn't have another game. Yeah. Every week that used to happen, and you get the hump on. But what do? You can't turn around, and Mike Riley was the boss at the time. I'm not going to say it in the media, Mike Riley's this, that, and the other. All I kept doing was thinking, you know what? If I get a chance, I'm going to screw you over. And that's what I thought mentally. Yeah. I thought, when I get my chance, I'm going to have the game of my life. And that's what I hope to do. And that's what I tried to do.
I do believe, going back to Mark's point, sorry for interrupting you, I do believe that because, look, he needs to get in his head that he has to work hard. Because I do think that he kind of thinks he's earned his own position. He said it himself, let's be honest. But at the same time, I do also think that you have interesting characters like Mo Salah, and you have to treat him differently.
And that's a key point for me, right? Because I think there's a danger that he could tarnish an unbelievable legacy at Liverpool. And listen, there are other players in the past. I think Nicolas Anelka, what a player he was, but I think we'll all agree that you remember him for being a bit of a surly nightmare, right? Don't damage your reputation. I don't understand how
they care. I think they're so big. We don't know how big Mo Salah is in the UAE. So I think when you look at Cristiano Ronaldo, he didn't care. There's some players, they hit a particular level. Mbappe at PSG, he didn't care. So I do think that there's some players, they're exceptions. Eric Cantona was an exception at Manchester United,
It's just a respect thing for me, though, isn't it? Look at Kenny Dalglish.
I do hear you, but I do think that some of these players, they're not all correct.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? There's something in their head where sometimes you have to make that one-off exception. He's not Steven Gerrard. His understanding and comprehension isn't the same. He lives in a totally
different culture,
different atmosphere, he's on a different level in terms of the kind of world star he is. So I think when you get to that level, Sir Alex Ferguson was good at that. He looked and he thought, you know what, Eric Cantona, I have to treat you a little bit different than I treat everybody else.
It's a fair point.
Cristiano, same.
Tell you what though, Lionel Messi's not selfish. Kenny Dalglish wasn't selfish. I don't think Messi's selfish.
Lionel Messi's one of the most selfish. Have you seen what he's doing in Miami over there? The way,
mate. If I was playing in Miami, I wouldn't pass anyone else. Wouldn't pass the balls to anybody either. I'm talking about his peak years at Barcelona. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I don't think he was selfish.
Ian, I'm going to send you 1 or 2 bits where I've spoken to some players and they've said that training never started until Messi got there.
Really?
Training never started until Messi got there. Before Liverpool in the Champions League, who's on their phone before the team talk?
Go on.
Lionel Messi.
Yeah.
He's on his phone. Don't get me wrong. He bangs it. No, it's not brilliant. You're not supposed to do that. That's not a great example.
Mate, I was saying that's brilliant insight. That's what I was going to say.
It's brilliant insight.
Yeah. But you need to realise, Joel, that this podcast never starts until Gordon turns up.
Yeah. Sorry.
All these stories of line bikes and being stuck in lifts and all the rest of it. Just get here on time, mate. You know what I mean?
To be on time is to be late. A bloke once said to me, "You're only late for people you don't respect," and that's absolutely true of this podcast. But you just reminded me of one of the legal letters I got from Manchester United was a story about Ronaldo using his phone at training.
Oh, really?
They piled into me for that, and I can tell you it's gospel. It's absolutely true.
Really?
But then you can't take that to a court of law because
what were the details of the story? What were the details?
It was a Ronaldo training story. You know, he was going through a particular issue with somebody off the pitch, and there was a phone call taken, and he got a massive bollocking for it. And I put the story at United. They denied it, but I was completely confident in where it came from, mainly because I knew the other person on the other end of the phone call. But you know, to preserve that reputation of how tight the dressing room, how tight the training ground was, and they won. You know, and fair play to them. That was an example of a manager looking after his team. Yeah. But then, you know, you always know very, very good at that.
Sir Alex?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really
brilliant
good at that, Sir Alex.
And that was fair play because he can then take the player aside and say, "See what I've done for you there, sir."
I think Klopp did the same thing for him when he took him off. He really, after post-match, they asked him about it. You know, Mo wasn't happy coming off, and he played it down so well. When really and truly, he could have been out the door with that reaction.
Now, Joel's been a great example of a composed pundit, you know, selecting his words very carefully. But we're now going to introduce Tottenham to the mix when all that is going to get chucked out the window. Because Ian Ladyman brought a fact to the table last night from the Champions League that I wouldn't say I was surprised when you said it, Ian, but 15,000 empty seats at the Spurs Stadium last night. Is that right?
Yeah, 15,000 empty seats. I touched down in Madrid late on Tuesday night, looked at my phone, going through the Champions League results, scanning a few of the reports, and it just leapt off. It just literally leapt off the page. Well, it didn't literally leap off the page. That's impossible. But it metaphorically leapt off the page to me. 15,000 empty seats at Tottenham for the Champions League game. I mean, given that they tried and fought so hard to get into that tournament, and you know how they got there through the Europa League final against Man United, it's only December. The Champions League season is not even halfway through. Tottenham are doing okay in it. They won the game. 15,000 empty seats. So I did reach out to my friend, and he says to me, this is a WhatsApp messages, cost, opposition, disillusionment, lots of reasons. They've definitely priced the group games too high. Villarreal, Copenhagen, Slavia Prague, more Europa League than Champions League. My seat would have been £65. That's too much, especially when the opposition isn't particularly appealing. So
65 quid, Joe. You know, I feel that that's just extortionate for a Champions League. It's a lot. That is a lot of money. And if you're a father and a daughter and a son or whatever, that's a lot of money, right?
Hey, that's not even.
But without making this tribal, without making this tribal, Arsenal are selling theirs out. Liverpool sell theirs out. Chelsea sell theirs out. Why are Tottenham not selling theirs out?
I don't know why Tottenham are not selling theirs out, if I'm honest with you. But I think league form's probably got something to do with it a little bit. I do think it mirrors a bit. I think if you're having a fantastic season, it's that fan feeling, isn't it? You know what? I want to buy more merch after the game. I want to go to the other competition. I don't mind going to a League Cup game. You know, if you're doing really well. I think if your team's not really doing well, you're going, I can't be bothered. There's a knock-on effect. I do think that's true. And if you're talking about why Arsenal are doing well, Arsenal are performing. You know, I'll be honest with you. At the current moment, I have been very privileged to be able to go with the brands or whatever it is that I do. But sometimes when I do go and I purchase a ticket, I look and I go, oh, mate, it's really expensive. It really is, you know. But at the same time, they can probably justify it because, like you said, Ian, people are attending. So
it's a really interesting one. For me as a fan, what's that say to your manager, Mark? You know, that 15,000 empty seats, that's going to suck the confidence out of him.
It's bonkers for me. I think you got the chance to play in the Champions League. You know, Tottenham haven't had success for the last so many years since they won the final. And I just think, or played in the final, and I just think Tottenham fans sometimes clubs can be arrogant as fans. And I think, you know, as a Newcastle fan, that stadium would be sold out 3 times over.
Newcastle's the opposite,
the Champions League,
isn't it?
Yeah, but when you hear that anthem, every time you hear that Champions League anthem, that is it for a fan. Every fan wants to see your team play in the Champions League, and I think it's bonkers to have 15,000 seats empty for an important Champions League game.
But Mark, Newcastle is a very special club. I'm not a Newcastle fan, but I think
but all clubs are. All clubs are.
No, I really think that place and Sunderland, right? I think there's something up that area. Let's not mention
that, Joel. I respect you.
No, well done, Joel.
But I have to say, like, going to the city of Newcastle, the one thing that I've noticed is, in my opinion, from the eye test, I've never seen such a young fan base go to the games. Yeah. I'm talking from the time they're 12, 13, you see them marching up that hill. Yeah. And so I just think it's so special.
You know, culturally, there's something there. Like when Sam Fender walks on to play his gig to the Champions League theme tune, shows you what it matters beyond just the football. Yeah. But go on, Mark. Go on.
It's just, I just think, you know, like sometimes, you know, fans, are they expecting something? Is it just, you know, the one that they think it's going to happen every year, and you know, and I get what Joel's saying. It is a younger fan base, and it's a family generated thing, isn't it? Where probably, you know, the children have been growing up, the fathers, the grandfathers, the great grandfathers. It's Newcastle's a one-off city, isn't it? It's not like London, where you're born in London and you can support a lot of clubs.
10 different football clubs.
Yeah. So can we decode this a little bit then? Because I wonder, Mark, is this something to do with the format of the new Champions League, do you think, Joel?
No.
I don't think so.
Because I say that as somebody who never get to see their club playing in the Champions League. It's unlikely Hibs will ever be there. But I don't feel as engaged with the new format as the old one.
I don't know what's wrong with you, if I'm honest with you.
Really? No, explain it to me.
I think I was against the format.
Yeah.
I really was. I thought to myself, oh my gosh, it's just another money ploy. There's extra games involved. What are we doing here? You know, but then the fact that they've been able to give me some of the blockbuster games a little bit early on in the season is fantastic.
You've had Bayern Munich.
We've had Bayern Munich, but even, for example, like as the time we're recording this at the moment, you've got Man City versus Real Madrid.
Well, Ian's in Madrid now, right?
Exactly. So Real Madrid versus Man City, I should say. So it's I'm looking forward to that. You know, I can't wait to watch that. And because I don't fully understand the format, if I'm honest with you, in terms of how the teams play, I'll be completely honest. I love the surprise element as well.
Yeah.
You go, what? Barcelona are playing such and such. Oh, I'm watching that. And you look and there's always a game that stands out. And
for some reason, that feels like the same reason I don't like it. It feels quite routine to me suddenly.
No, Gordon, I think you're off the mark. I think George hit the nail on the head. I think, no, listen, I think
stop agreeing.
When I was refereeing Champions League, the big teams didn't care if they didn't win the first games. It was just natural because they knew they would qualify. They would win have to win 2 home games, maybe 1 away game, and they'd qualified because the top 2 sides qualified. And even now, the 3rd team went into the Europa League. Now everybody's fighting. Everybody is fighting for every match, and what that does, it creates competitiveness. And I think every team now is fighting for that 24th spot.
Yeah,
you know, to get into that. To get into that, at least to the qualification. And I think, you know what? I think it's brought this wonderful element where, you know, teams don't just go for a 0-0, 1-1. I think it's getting, you know, I saw Chelsea and Barcelona recently, and it was an amazing game to watch. Both teams competitive, and it was a great game to see Chelsea wanting to win against Barcelona.
But the only thing I would say about this format, I think it does get exciting towards the end. But you've got to remember, last year's winners, PSG, they finished like in the league table, they finished way down. And that's why Liverpool played them. Liverpool finished 2nd in the table and were just so unlucky that they got drawn with a much lower team that by complete freak happened to be PSG because it had such a rotten spell. So PSG, without checking my stats, won the Champions League last year, having lost a number of games or underperformed in a number of games in what you call the league stage. Now, is that right? Is that right that you can lose? So it's supposed to be well, it didn't really, Mark.
You could finish second. You could finish second in the group, and it didn't make any difference.
Yeah, you could finish second. That meant you could probably lose
but you had, if you remember, Ian, in that format, that old format, you had 2 big sides and 2 lower sides. So what happened? You could read every group stage. I could see before I kicked off, them 2 teams are going to qualify. Them 2 teams are going to qualify. And guess what? At the end of the 6 games, them 2 teams qualified. It became so. It just
the other way that it did need a shake up. The other way they could have shaken it up was just by making it an unseeded draw, so you could get 4 big teams in a group. Right now, UEFA are never going to do that because they want the big teams in the latter stages. Exactly. Obviously, we know that. But all I'm saying is,
but if it's truly the Champions League, that would be fair enough because you don't need to be seeded in the Champions Trophy.
From a sporting point of view, there are other options available. There are always other options available, but they always get ignored. They always get ignored because money is the end of the game.
That does come back to the argument about whether it is a Champions competition, then, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
because it's not.
Do we care that much? I'm just entertained, like, for example, I really am entertained. And Spurs need to sort it out, really.
Good. He managed it in the end. Just a little tick.
Exactly.
But it's interesting, isn't it, to see all the English clubs that are represented, and you could put the Scottish clubs in there, but they never get that far. There would never be an empty seat at Rangers or Celtic. There would never be an empty seat at Newcastle. Arsenal, arguably. Man City, possibly. There'd be an empty seat. They don't like the Champions League.
And also, by the way, I'm not one of these people who thinks that, when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, watching what was First Division football with my dad, he used to turn up at First Division grounds and just pay and walk on. Okay, this concept of selling out every game is a very new thing. It's a very, very modern thing, okay? When Nottingham Forest were winning European Cups in 79 and 80, 81, whenever it was, they weren't selling out their ground on the way to the final. Go and look at the statistics. It's in the history books. There's no obligation to sell out a stadium, okay? It's expensive, as Gordon pointed out. There's travel involved, as Joel pointed out. But what I will say is when you see 15,000 empty seats at a stadium like we did for Tottenham, then something is very wrong.
Ian, you're saying there's no obligations, but I guarantee you, the business operations guy out there, they're telling him something completely different.
Absolutely.
No, I mean, in terms of culturally, I hate it when people say, "Oh, you're not a big club, you can't sell all your tickets." It's not always about that. It's not always about that.
You can bet somebody's getting their arse handed to them at Spurs today for 15,000 empty seats.
Yeah, Thomas Frank probably.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Ultimately, it comes back to that, doesn't it?
Right, before we get back into football chat, we're in partnership with Wix Trade Pro, and honestly, if you're a tradesperson listening, this is one you want to hear.
Aye, because Wix Trade Pro is here to save you time and money. Save 10% every time you shop in-store or online. No minimum spend, no faff, just proper savings.
Wix know that tool theft can have a devastating impact on you, your life and your livelihood, and since prevention is always better than a cure, let's start there. They've just launched something genuinely smart with Deter Tech. It's called Smart Water, award-winning forensic marking technology that helps combat tool theft. Basically, mark your gear and it becomes traceable and recoverable if it's ever nicked.
Amazing. Anyway, 3 steps. 1, mark your tools with the applicator and solution. 2, stick the deterrent signage up. And 3, register it so anything nicked can be identified.
Simple, effective, and gives you peace of mind, which is more than Mark ever gave Premier League managers.
Unbelievable. Download the Wix Trade Pro app to sign up today. Right, Mark, the good, the bad and the barmy, a refereeing decision for Mark to analyse for us this week, and it's a good one actually, a really interesting one for me. We're looking at Brighton's equaliser at home to West Ham on Sunday. Little reminder, Jorginho receives the ball, bounces off his thigh, onto his arm, right? So the key point is off the thigh, onto the arm, takes a shot, deflected into the path of Minty, who scores, and it draws, levels the game, right? So, Mark, good, bad, barmy, how do you unpick that one?
Bad. And I'm going to analyse it quite quickly. I think West Ham and Nuno Espirito has a big argument. They were upset afterwards, maybe because it was the last few minutes of the game. But this goal never feels right. And it'll be interesting to hear what Joel has to say, but it doesn't feel right as a football fan. And I think when the ball comes in the way the law is written, their arm is slightly away from the body. So certainly if a ball hits direct to the arm, I don't think there will be any dispute that it's a handball. It does strike or it flicks the thigh onto the arm. So therefore, under the new laws of the game, it cannot be given as a handball. But I'm going to go slightly before that, and there's an overhead kick. And then what happens as this overhead kick comes in from that, which is the cross that hits the arm, there's a overhead kick which the defender puts his head in to head the ball. The overhead kick happens. There's a small distance between the overhead kick and the head, which I believe is dangerous play, is not even looked at. Only the handball is. And it's interesting. Simon Hooper was the referee who doesn't penalise the overhead kick. And he was the referee back in his debut in 2016, Norwich Crystal Palace, where he never refereed a Premier League game for a long time after it, where he disallowed an overhead kick goal for Jerome when Delaney put his head in, similar, and he disallowed it. So maybe it's playing on his head that he got criticised so much after that game for disallowing the goal, he's allowed the game to continue. But for me, it doesn't feel right that an overhead kick like this, we all want to see great moments, but when a player is about to put his head into the ball and there's an overhead kick, for me, this is dangerous play and it should have been disallowed.
Am I not right in thinking then, Mark, that goal, the ball goes from the thigh to the hand and he shoots and the keeper saves it? If that had gone in, they'd have disallowed it, wouldn't they?
No, because it's still under it's an accidental, because it's come from his thigh onto his arm.
I read the rule on Monday, and from my reading of the rule, if that
touched his hand, yes. Yeah, if it's touched his arm, yes, you're right.
If it touches his hand and then he scores, it's disallowed. If it touches his hands, he doesn't score, but then he scores from the rebound, it's not handball.
Yeah,
no,
so
because it goes to
hold on a second.
No.
Hold on a second. Just one point then. So does it make more sense for Areola to let the first shot in than save it? Do you know what I mean?
Correct.
Does it undermine the entire point of football?
Yes.
But the goalkeepers aren't going to think like that.
No, but that's your point.
Unless you're playing for Jose Mourinho. Unless you're playing for Jose, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, of course it is. But he's not. The goalkeepers aren't going to think like that. But it's an interesting point what Ian said. The problem is when the goalkeeper saves it, goes to a teammate who crosses it back to him and he scores. It's just a bonkers way of finding a way to give a goal.
Mark, I'll be completely honest, right? I'm nowhere near as well versed as you are or Ian is when it comes to the letter of the law regarding this. I'm looking at it from the optics point of view. It just looked like a handball to me. It looked like it hit his thigh. And I feel like looking at it, it wasn't a great touch. Yes, everyone can say, it happens fast and they were scrambling around in the box, but it bloody bounced off the wrong part of his thigh and then it hit his arm, which was not direct. In my opinion, it wasn't really next to his thigh anyway. So it just looked like a handball. I was really surprised that they it just felt like, it just felt wrong.
I'm with
looking at it.
But even if, Joel, what I'm saying as a top referee is as a top referee, when it doesn't feel right and you've got the laws of the game, the way they're written and the interpretations and you can argue both ways, find another way. The other way is the overhead kick. I can easily say, you know what, we can argue over the handball. People will say, maybe in the law it's not a handball. Maybe in the law it is. Maybe it doesn't feel right. But the overhead kick, slight seconds before, that is a one where you go, as a top referee, I'll have that one. So at least I'm disallowing the goal. We've got two elements here that are both subjective. Nobody will argue when you disallow it.
Yeah. I like that one, Mark. That's very clear. That's why you are a top referee. Well done. I like that.
The problem is, though, if he had done that, then there would be a board reviewing your performance and you would be marked down for using common sense.
No, but this is where it's great, Gordon. It's close to Christmas and I fancy the Christmas break off.
He wants a suspension. You want the suspension. It's known as the Paul Merson rule. Right, boys. But that is an interesting point, though, isn't it? Because, again, so often these conversations come back to common sense. I see that as a fan. It was pretty obvious to me immediately as a handball.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think that's the thing that frustrates fans at the moment, isn't it? Refereeing decisions like that, where common sense seems to evaporate from the game. Final word to you on that, Ian, because you are often very defensive of referees, actually. You think that the respect's lacking in the game. It's not helping anybody, is it, a decision like that?
No, but one of the things I think I'm also quite consistent on is that the laws of the game don't help referees. And this is one instant of that. The laws of the game have become too complicated and too nuanced and too messed up.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to expect referees to get things right. And with Joel, just looked like a handball, and that's because it was a handball.
No, I agree with you slightly. And it's not just the laws of the game. Consistency. It doesn't matter. You've got the laws. If the laws of the game are written, there's an interpretation. If the interpretation is always given and everybody understands it week to week, fans' frustration will be less and less. Yeah, you'll have an odd mistake. That's life. But there's every week, you'll see a foul given for a shirt pull. The next week, there's a bigger shirt pull not given. It's the consistency side of the laws of the game.
Now, we learn from experience in this podcast. Last week, Troops had a little rant about Unai Emery, and our phones melted for a whole week.
Really?
Honestly.
What was he
still
like?
going.
Was he Troops, the best way to put it?
Yeah, it was Troops.
That's the best way to put it.
He argued that Arsenal would have won more silverware if they'd stuck with Emery.
I thought he was. I've been running around blaming people like him as being the catalyst for him being out. Am I wrong?
I think you're right. I think that's basically what's being said.
Oh, okay.
But in the spirit of that, I thought we'd offer you the opportunity to finish the podcast with a classic Joel monologue about Arsenal. Has the nosebleed started, or are Villa genuine title
You're
contenders?
going to be very disappointed with me, mate. I'm like Mark. I work with the clubs,
Yeah.
so for me, I always say when it comes to issues like that, I say, listen, I let the club make those decisions. You know what I mean? When it comes to the end of the season, if they feel he should go, then that's it. If they feel he should stay, then my job's just to come in and make sure that I do a good job on Whistleblowers.
My question was just about: is it a nosebleed starting for Arsenal, or were Villa just really good?
No. Do you mean against Villa? Or do you mean the
I
season
think
itself?
generally. Do you think is it the first sign with City applying huge pressure? Villa are looking good at the moment. They're 9 points in the last 3 games.
Mid-December. Like it's okay. We're still top. Yeah. I think when it comes to Arsenal, the issue is it's like the PTSD because we've seen it before in the last 3 years, and obviously we haven't won anything for like 24 years. It's what the league that is.
Yeah.
It's that's where the fans get a little bit edgy. If it was City on top or Liverpool in this particular position, it's nowhere near as much panic. We got them again in 2-3 weeks. I was on TalkSport yesterday with Gabby Bonahoy. He summoned me specifically for this game. I said, Geezer, you haven't applied more than 70 points in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Aston Villa, you're not going to win it. Like, it's fine. It doesn't matter what you say.
Mm-hmm.
Europa, maybe, but that's it. I just think it's the pressure. It's the pressure.
Right, boys. It's been a pleasure. Joe, it's great having you on as a voice of calm
too,
and a voice of reason. Very composed performance from an Arsenal pundit. It's not what we used to after Troops came in.
Oh, mate! When I saw the highlights of the show last week, I thought, they're in for a baptism of fire. I don't even think they know it.
It was wild. It was wild. Well, Joe, thanks.
Hey,
for
by the way,
coming.
we did the Tuesday show on the worst team in the Premier League. Blimey, in Premier League history, having now watched Wolves lose at home to Manchester United. Oh my God!
Bad, isn't it?
Yeah. They are.
It's bad.
Wow.
Because Ian said to me after the show last week, he said, I'm a little bit worried that we've just said Wolves are the worst team in Prem. What if they turn it around in the next 2 games? We're going to look stupid. It made us look great, Ian.
Absolutely. I mean, how bad are they against Man United? My God.
I don't want us to talk too much about Wolves because we got them this coming Saturday. And
okay.
Commentator's curse. Yeah, it's a jinx. Right, thanks very much for coming along, Joel. Great to see you, boys. Please get in touch with us. Email us, whistleblowers@dailymail.com. Find the socials. Just look up Troops and you'll find us somewhere there.
I saw him. He's being advertised on the board outside in the office. I thought, wow, what an impression.
Tremendous stuff. Right, Mark, it's down to you. You're not here today, but I'm sure you've got your whistle on you. Give us the full-time whistle. Thank you very much for watching Whistleblowers. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember, episodes every Thursday and Tuesday. And on a Sunday, you'll get our clip of the week.